13.15. Recharge and recovery wells. Any well drilled under Title 73, Chapter 3, Billions of the Groundwater Recharge and Recovery Act shall be constructed in a manner consistent with this rule, and shall be drilled by a currently licensed driller. Special rules regarding the injection of water into the ground are also promulgated under the jurisdiction of the Utah Department of Environmental Special Wells Quality Division of Water Quality under Rule R-317-7, and must be followed in conjunction with the water well drilling rules, R-655-412, R-655-413, deepening, rehabilitation and renovation of wells, and sealing of casing. 13.1.1. If in the repair of a drilled well, the old casing is withdrawn, the well shall be recased and resealed, in accordance with the requirements provided in subsection R-655-411. 13.2 Inner casing. 13.2.1. If an inner casing is installed to prevent leakage of undesirable water into a well, the space between the two well casings shall be completely sealed, using packers, casing swedging, or pressure grouting, to prevent the movement of water between the casings. 13.3 Outer casing. If the overdrive method is used to eliminate leakage around an existing well, the casing driven over the well shall meet the minimum specifications listed in subsection R-655-411. 13.4 Artesian wells. 13.4.1. If upon deepening an existing well, an artesian zone is encountered, the well shall be cased and completed, as provided in subsection R-655-4-11. 13.5 Drilling in a dug well. 13.5.1 A drilled well may be constructed through an existing dug well provided that. 13.5.1.1 Unperforated casing requirements. An unperforated section of well casing extends from a depth of at least 10 feet below the bottom of the dug well, and at least 20 feet below land surface to above the maximum static water level in the dug well. 13.5.1.2 Seal required. A 2-foot thick seal of neat cement grout, sand cement grout, or bentonite grout is placed in the bottom of the dug well so as to prevent the direct movement of water from the dug well into the drilled well. 13.5.1.3 Test of seal. The drilled well shall be pumped or baled to determine whether the seal described in subsection R-655-413 is adequate to prevent movement of water from the dug well into the drilled well. If the seal leaks, additional sealing and testing shall be performed until a watertight seal is obtained. 13.6% Well rehabilitation and cleaning. 13.6.1 Tools used to rehabilitate or clean a well shall be cleaned, disinfected, and free of contamination before placement in a well. 13.6.2 The driller shall use rehabilitation and cleaning tools properly, so as not to permanently damage the well or aquifer. If the surface seal is damaged, or destroyed in the process of rehabilitation or cleaning, the driller shall repair the surface seal to the standards set forth in subsection R-655-411. 13.6.3 Debris, sediment, and other materials displaced inside the well and surrounding aquifer as a result of rehabilitation or cleaning shall be completely removed by pumping, baling, well development, or other approved methods. 13.6.4 Detergents, chlorine, acids, or other chemicals placed in wells for increasing or restoring yield shall be specifically designed for that purpose and used according to the manufacturer's recommendations. 13.6.5 Any renovation, rehabilitation, cleaning, or other work on a well that requires alteration of the well itself shall be conducted by a licensed well driller. 13.6 Following completion of deepening, renovation, rehabilitation, cleaning, or other work on a well, the well shall be properly disinfected in accordance with subsection R-655-411. R-655-413. R-655-414 Abandonment of wells. 14.1 Temporary abandonment. 14.1.1 When any well is temporarily removed from service, the top of the well shall be sealed with a tamper-resistant, watertight cap or seal. If a well is in the process of being drilled and is temporarily abandoned, the well shall be sealed with a tamper-resistant, watertight cap or seal, and a surface seal installed in accordance with subsection R-655-411. The well may be temporarily abandoned during construction for a maximum of 90 days. After the 90-day period, the temporarily abandoned well shall be completed as a well that meets the standards of section R-655-411, or permanently abandoned in accordance with the following requirements, and an official well abandonment report, also known as an abandonment log, must be submitted in compliance with section R-655-44. 14.2 Permanent abandonment. 14.2.1 This section applies to the abandonment of the type of wells listed in subsection R-655-41, including private water wells, public supply wells, monitor wells, cathodic protection wells, and heating or cooling exchange wells. A licensed driller shall notify the state engineer before commencing abandonment work of an existing well and submit a complete and accurate abandonment log following abandonment work in accordance with section R-655-44. Before commencing abandonment work, the driller shall obtain a copy of the well log of the well proposed to be abandoned from the well owner or the state engineer if available to determine the proper abandonment procedure. Any well that is to be permanently abandoned shall be completely filled from bottom to top in a manner to prevent vertical movement of water within the borehole as well as preventing the annular space surrounding the well casing from becoming a conduit for possible contamination of the groundwater supply. A well driller who wishes to abandon a well in a manner that does not comply with the provisions set forth in this section must request approval from the state engineer. 14.3 License required. 14.3.1 Well abandonment shall be accomplished under the direct supervision of a currently licensed water well driller, who shall be responsible for verification of the procedures and materials used. 14.4 Yields. 14.4.1 Neat cement grout, sand cement grout, unhydrated bentonite or bentonite grout in accordance with subsection R-655-411 shall be used to abandon wells and boreholes. Other sealing materials or additives, such as fly ash, may be used in the preparation of grout upon approval of the state engineer. Drilling mud or drill cuttings shall not be used as any part of a sealing materials for well. Abandonment of wells. Abandonment. The liquid phase of the abandonment fluid shall be water from a potable municipal system or disinfected in accordance with subsection R-655-411. 14.5 Placement of materials. 14.5.1 Neat cement and sand cement grout shall be introduced at the bottom of the well or required sealing interval and placed progressively upward to the top of the well. The sealing material shall be placed by the use of a grout pipe, tremie line, dump baler, or equivalent to avoid freefall bridging or dilution of the sealing materials or separation of aggregates from sealants. Sealing material shall not be installed by freefall or gravity unless the interval to be sealed is dry and no deeper than 30 feet below ground surface. If the well to be abandoned is a flowing artesian well, the well may be pressure grouted from the surface. The well should be capped immediately after placement of seal materials to allow the seal material to set up and not flow out of the well. 14.5.2 Bentonite-based abandonment products shall be mixed and placed according to manufacturer's recommended procedures and result in a seal free of voids or bridges. Granular or powered bentonite shall not be placed underwater. When placing unhydrated bentonite, a sounding or tamping tool shall be run in the sealing interval during pouring to measure fill-up rate, verify a continuous seal placement, and to break up possible bridges or cake formation. 14.5.3. If seal material settlement occurs during placement and setup, the top of the abandoned well casing or borehole shall be topped off with approved sealing material until the seal top remains at the natural ground surface. 14.5.4. Abandonment materials placed opposite any non-water-bearing intervals or zones shall be at least as impervious as the formation or strata before penetration during the drilling process. 14.5. Before well or borehole abandonment, all pump equipment, piping and other debris shall be removed to the extent possible. The well shall also be sounded immediately before it is plugged to make sure that no obstructions exist that will interfere with the filling and sealing. If the well contains lubricating oil that has leaked from a turbine shaft pump, it shall be removed from the well before abandonment and disposed of in accordance with applicable state and federal regulations. 14.5.6. Verification shall be made that the volume of sealing and fill material placed in a well during abandonment operations equals or exceeds the volume of the well or borehole to be filled and sealed. R 655-4-14. Abandonment of wells. 14.6. Termination of casing. 14.6.1. The casings of wells to be abandoned shall be severed to the natural ground surface or deeper if necessitated by development of the area. If the casing is severed below ground surface, compacted native material shall be placed above the abandoned well upon completion. 14.7%. Abandonment of artesian wells. 14.7.1. A neat cement grout, sand cement grout, or concrete plug shall be placed in the confining stratum overlying the artesian zone so as to prevent subsurface leakage from the artesian zone. The rest of the well shall be filled with sand cement grout, neat cement grout, bentonite abandonment products or bentonite grout. The uppermost 10 feet of the well shall be abandoned as required in subsection R 6554, 6005.8. Abandonment of drilled and jetted wells. A neat cement grout plug shall be placed opposite all perforations, screens, or openings in the well casing. The rest of the well shall be filled with cement grout, neat cement, bentonite abandonment products, concrete or bentonite slurry. The uppermost 10 feet of the well shall be abandoned as required in subsection R 655-4-14. 14.9. Abandonment of gravel-packed wells. 14.9.1. All gravel-packed wells shall be pressure grouted throughout the perforated or screened section of the well. The rest of the well shall be filled with sand cement grout, neat cement grout, bentonite, abandonment products or bentonite grout. If gravel pack extends above or below the perforated or screened interval in the annular space between the casing and borehole wall, additional perforations in that blank interval of casing shall be required. The uppermost 10 feet of the well shall be abandoned as required in subsection R 655-4-14. 14.10. Removal of casing. 14.10.1. Where possible, it is recommended that the well casing be removed during well abandonment, and when doing so, the abandonment materials shall be placed from the bottom of the well or borehole progressively upward as the casing is removed. The well shall be sealed with sand cement grout, neat cement grout, bentonite abandonment products or bentonite grout. In the case of gravel-packed wells, the entire gravel section shall be pressure grouted. The uppermost 10 feet of the well shall be abandoned as required in subsection R 655-4-14. 14.11. Replacement wells. R 655-4-14. Abandonment of wells. 14.11.1. Wells, which are to be removed from operation and replaced by the drilling of a new well under an approved replacement application, shall be abandoned in a manner consistent with section R 655-4-14, before the rig is removed from the site of the newly constructed replacement well, unless written authorization to remove the rig without abandonment is provided by the state engineer. Also refer to the requirements provided in subsection R 655-4-4. 14.1. To abandonment of cathodic protection wells. 14.12.1. The general requirements for permanent well abandonment, in accordance with section R 655-4-14, shall be followed for the abandonment of cathodic protection wells. 14.12.2. A cathodic protection well shall be investigated before it is destroyed to determine its condition, details of its construction, and whether conditions exist that will interfere with filling and sealing. 14.12.3. Casing, cables, anodes, granular backfill, conductive backfill, and sealing material shall be removed as needed, by redrilling if necessary, to the point needed to allow proper placement of abandonment material. Casing that cannot be removed shall be adequately perforated or punctured at specific intervals to allow pressure injection of sealing materials into granular backfill and all other voids that require sealing. 655-414. 15.1. Scope. 15.1.1. Certain construction standards that apply to water wells also apply to monitor wells. Therefore, these monitoring well standards refer frequently to the water well standard sections of this rule. Standards that apply only to monitor wells, or that require emphasis, are discussed in this section. 15.1.2. These standards are not intended as a complete manual for monitoring well construction, alteration, maintenance, and abandonment. These standards serve only as minimum statewide guidelines towards ensuring that monitor wells do not constitute a significant pathway for the movement of poor quality water, pollutants, or contaminants. These standards provide no assurance that a monitor well will perform a desired function. Ultimate responsibility for the design and performance of a monitoring well rests with the well owner or the owner's contractor, or technical representatives. Most monitor well projects are the result of compliance with the Environmental Protection Agency, federal regulations such as the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, or specific state solid and hazardous waste requirements. The contracts governing their installation are tightly written, containing specific requirements as to site location, materials used, sampling procedures, and overall objectives. Therefore, specific construction requirements for monitor well installation shall be governed by applicable contracts and regulations, providing they meet or exceed state requirements and specifications. Guidelines and recommended practices dealing with the installation of monitor wells may be obtained from the state engineer upon request. Additional recommended information may be obtained from the Environmental Protection Agency, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Groundwater Monitoring Enforcement and Compliance document available from EPA's regional office in Denver, Colorado, and from the Handbook of Suggested Practices for the Design and Installation of Groundwater Monitoring Wells, available from the National Groundwater Association in Dublin, Ohio. 15.2. Installation and construction. 15.2.1. Materials and equipment contaminant-free. All material used in the installation of monitor wells shall be contaminant-free when placed in the ground. Drilling equipment shall be clean and contaminant-free in accordance with subsection R 655-411. During construction, contaminated water should not be allowed to enter contaminant-free geologic formations, water-bearing zones. 15.2.2%. Borehole integrity. Some minor cross-contamination may occur during the drilling process, but the integrity of the borehole and individual formations must then be safeguarded from permanent cross-connection. R 655-4-15. R 655-4-15. Monitor well construction standards. 15.2.3. Casing and screen. The well casing should be perforated or screened and filter packed with sand or gravel, where necessary, to provide adequate sample collection at depths where appropriate aquifer flow zones exist. The casing and screen selected shall not affect or interfere with the chemical, physical, radiological, or biological constituents of interest. Screens in the same well shall not be placed across separate water-bearing zones to minimize interconnection, aquifer commingling, and cross-contamination. Screens in a nested well can be placed in separate water-bearing zones as long as the intervals between the water-bearing zones are appropriately sealed, and aquifer cross-connection and commingling does not occur. Monitor well casing and screen shall conform to ASTM standards, or consist of at least 304 or 316 stainless steel PTFE, or Schedule 40 PVC casing. 15.2.4 Gravel or filter pack. If installed, the gravel or filter pack should generally extend 2 feet to 10 feet above screened or perforated areas to prevent the migration of the sealing material from entering the zones being sampled. Gravel or filter pack material shall meet the requirements of subsection R655-411. Gravel or filter pack for monitoring wells does not require disinfection. Drill cutting should not be placed into the open borehole annulus. The well driller shall ensure that a bridge or voids do not occur in the annular space during the placement of the gravel pack by a sounding device or other mechanism. 15.2.5 Annular seal. All monitor wells constructed shall have a continuous surface seal, which seals the annular space between the borehole and the permanent casing, in accordance with the provisions in section R655-411. The surface seal depth requirements of section R655-411 do not apply to monitor wells. The surface seal may be more or less than 30 feet depending on the screen or perforation or gravel pack interval. Seals shall also be constructed to prevent interconnection and commingling of separate aquifers penetrated by the well, prevent migration of surface water and contaminations into the well and aquifers, and shall provide casing stability. The seal shall have a minimum diameter of 4 inches larger than the nominal size of the permanent casing, and shall extend from land surface to the top of the filter pack. After the permanent casing and optional filter pack has been set in final position, a layer of bentonite or fine sand such as mortar sand shall be placed on top of the filter pack to maintain separation between the seal material and the screened interval to ensure that the seal placement will not interfere with the filter pack. The remaining annular space shall be filled to land surface in a continuous operation with unhydrated bentonite, neat cement grout, sand cement grout, or bentonite grout. Only potable water should be used to hydrate any grout or slurry mixture. The completed annular space shall fully surround the permanent casing, be evenly distributed, free of voids, and extend. Monitor well construction standards. From the permanent casing to undisturbed or recompacted soil, all sealing materials and placement methods shall conform to the standards in section R60554 and subsection R655-411. Shall ensure that a bridge or voids do not occur in the annular space during the placement of the seal. 15.2.6 Cuttings, decon water, development water and other IDW. Drill cuttings, decontamination water, monitor well development water, and other investigation-derived waste shall be managed and disposed of in accordance with applicable state and federal environmental regulations. It is the responsibility of the driller to know and understand such requirements. 15.3 Minimum surface protection requirements. 15.3.1 If a well is cased with metal and completed above ground surface, a locking water-resistant cap shall be installed on the top of the well. 15.3.2 If the well is not cased with metal and completed above ground surface, a protective metal casing shall be installed over and around the well. The protective casing shall be cemented at least 2 feet into the ground around the non-metallic casing. A watertight cap shall be installed in the top of the well casing. A locking cap shall be installed on the top of the protective casing. 15.3.3 Monitor wells completed above ground and potentially accessible to vehicular damage shall be protected in the following manner. At least 3 metal posts, at least 3 inches in diameter, shall be cemented in place around the casing. Each post shall extend at least 3 feet above and 2 feet below ground surface. A concrete pad may be installed to add protection to the surface completion. If installed, the concrete pad shall be at least 4 inches thick and shall slope to drain away from the well casing. The base shall extend at least 2 feet laterally in all directions from the outside of the well boring. When a concrete pad is used, the well seal may be part of the concrete pad. 15.3.4 If the well is completed below land surface, a watertight cap with a lock shall be attached to the top of the well casing. A metal monument or equivalent shall be installed over and around the well. The monument shall serve as a protective cover and be installed level with the land surface and be equipped with a waterproof seal to prevent inflow of any water or contaminants. Drains will be provided when feasible to keep water out of the well and below the well cap. The monument and cover must be designed to withstand the maximum expected load. 15.4 Abandonment. 15.4.1 Abandonment of monitor wells shall be completed in compliance with section R655-414. The requirements in section R655-414 are not required for the permanent abandonment of monitor wells completed at a depth of 30 feet below natural ground surface. Are not required for the permanent 416.16.1 pump installation practices. All pump installations shall be completed in such a manner as to prevent waste and contamination of groundwater by pollution material entering the well from pumping equipment, casing connectors, fittings, piping, sanitary seals, or caps. 16.2 Surface seal. If in the process of pump installation or repair, the well surface seal is disturbed or damaged, it shall be repaired and resealed in accordance with the standards provided in subsection R655-411. 16.3 Tools, equipment, and materials. Downhole tools and equipment used in performance of pump installation and repair shall be cleaned, disinfected, and free of contamination before placement in a well. All tools, drilling equipment, and materials used to drill a well shall be free of contaminants before beginning pump-related work. Contaminants include lubricants, fuel, or bacteria that will reduce the well efficiency, and any other items that will be harmful to public health or the resource or reduce the life of the water well. It is recommended that excess lubricants placed on equipment be wiped clean before insertion into the well. Thread compounds, sealants, and lubricants must not exceed the maximum contaminant levels for chemicals, taste, and odor. The licensee shall use pump-related tools and equipment properly so as not to permanently damage the well or aquifer. 16.4% Disinfection. Following completion of pump installation and repair work on a well, the well pump and in-well discharge piping shall be properly disinfected in accordance with subsection R655-411. 16.5 Product, material, and process standards. Any product, material, or procedure designed for use related to pump installation and repair of water production or non-production wells, which has received certification and approval for its intended use by the National Sanitation Foundation under ANSI NSF Standard 60 or 61, the American Society for Testing Materials, the American Waterworks Association, or the American National Standards Institute may be utilized. Other products, materials, or procedures may also be utilized for their intended purpose upon manufacturer certification that they meet or exceed the standards or certifications referred to in this section and upon state engineer approval. Organic substances shall not be introduced into the well or borehole during pump installation and repair work. 16.6 Surface completions. Pump installers shall leave the well surface completion upon completion of pump installation or repair work in accordance with the standards in section R 655-411 as it pertains to casing stick-up, steel, or PVC casing extensions. R 655-416 Pump installation and repair. Sanitary capping and venting and protective casings. Upon completion, all wells shall be equipped with a watertight, tamper-resistant casing cap or sanitary seal. 16.7 Flowing artesian wells. In accordance with subsection R 655-4-11 artesian wells that flow naturally at the surface, the well shall be equipped with a control valve so that the flow can be completely stopped. The control valve must be available for inspection by the state engineer at all times. 16.8 Seals between casings. If the well is constructed of multiple casing strings at or near the ground surface, and if a pitless adapter or unit is installed, the standards of subsection R 655-411 shall be employed to ensure proper sealing between casings is maintained. 16.9% Water level and flow measurement. Following pump installation and repair work, the well shall be left in such a manner to allow for access to water level measurements in accordance with subsection R 655-411. After pump installation and repair work is completed on a well, the static water level should be measured, after which a test should be performed to determine the rate at which groundwater can be reliably produced from the well. Pumping water level should be measured and recorded during this test. Static water level and well testing information shall be noted on the official submittal of the pump log by the pump installer or well driller. 16.10 Surface security. If it becomes necessary for the pump installer to temporarily discontinue operation on a well before completion or otherwise leave the well unattended, the well must be covered securely to prevent contaminants from entering the casing and rendered secure against entry by children, vandals, domestic animals, and wildlife. 16.1 1 Above-grade connections. An above-grade connection into the top or side of a well casing shall be at least 18 inches above the land surface and shall be constructed so as to exclude dirt or other foreign matter by at least one of the following methods, as may be applicable. Threaded connection, welded connection, expansion sealer, bolted flanges with rubber gaskets, overlapping well cap, or if a water well pump is mounted or sealed on a concrete pedestal, the casing shall extend at least to the top of the pedestal and at least 18 inches above the pump installation and repair. Land surface. 16.1 2 Pitless connections. Pitless adapters and units shall be installed in accordance with the standards set forth in subsection R 655-411. Pitless adapters shall be installed below the frost line. A below-ground connection shall not be submerged in water when installed. Holes cut in the casing through which the pitless adapters are installed must be sized and constructed to guarantee a watertight seal with the pitless adapter in place. 16.1 3 Backflow protection. When a check valve or foot valve is not a part of the pump, a check valve or back siphon prevention device shall be installed on the pump discharge line within the well or beyond the well to eliminate the opportunity for contaminated water to backflush into the well. Such device must be designed to direct or isolate the water flow to prevent water in the distribution line from running back down the well during removal or repair to the pump and pumping equipment. When a flow meter is installed on a well, the meter must be located downstream from the backflow preventer and be placed in accordance with manufacturer spacing specifications. 16.1 4 Hand pumps. Hand pumps shall be of the force type equipped with a packing gland around the pump rod, a delivery spout that is closed and downward directed, and a one-piece bell-type base that is part of the pump stand or is attached to the pump column in a watertight manner. The bell base of the pump shall be bolted with a gasket to a flange that is securely attached to the casing or pipe sleeve. 16.15 Pumping water level. In a screened or perforated well, the well pump setting and suction inlet shall be located so that the pumping level of the water cannot be drawn below the top of the screen. 16.1 6 Pump and column or drop pipe removal. During any repair or installation of a water well pump, the licensed installer shall make a reasonable effort to maintain the integrity of groundwater and to prevent contamination by elevating the pump column and fittings, or by other means suitable under the circumstances. 16.1 6 Pump and column or drop pipe removal. During any repair or installation of a water well pump, the licensed installer shall make a reasonable effort to maintain the integrity of groundwater and to prevent contamination by elevating the pump column and fittings, or by other means suitable under the circumstances. R 655-416. R 655-417 Shallow water well construction requirements. 17 General. Shallow water wells at a depth of 30 feet or less shall be constructed and equipped by a licensed well driller pump installer or shallow water well constructor. Shallow water wells shall be constructed using methods and materials that will result in a well that is safe for the public and environment and not a source of subsurface leakage, waste, or contamination of the groundwater resource. The well drilling and construction requirements for wells deeper than 30 feet found in section R 655-411 do not apply to shallow water wells that are 30 feet deep or less. Approved products, materials, and procedures. Any product, material, or procedure designed for use in the drilling, construction, cleaning, renovation, development, or abandonment of shallow water production wells shall be designed for that purpose and be safe for the public and environment. 17.2 Shallow water well casing. It shall be the sole responsibility of the well driller or shallow water well constructor to determine the suitability of any type of well casing for the particular well being constructed. 17.2.1 Casing stick-up. The well casing shall extend a minimum of 18 inches above finished ground level, and the natural ground surface should slope away from the casing. A secure sanitary, weatherproof mechanically secured cap, seal, or a completely welded cap shall be placed on the top of the well casing to prevent contamination of the well. 17.3 Surface seals. A surface seal shall be installed in the annular space between the well casing and borehole wall from ground surface to an appropriate depth to protect the well from surface water contamination. The seal shall also prevent the upward movement of artesian waters within the annular space around the well casing. 17.3.1 Seal material. The seal material shall consist of neat cement grout, sand cement grout, or unhydrated bentonite such as granular, tabular, pelletized, or chip bentonite, as defined in section R 655-42. 17.4 Access port. Every shallow water well shall be equipped with a usable access port so that the position of the water level or pressure head in the well can be measured at all times. 17.5 Static water level, well development, and well yield. To fulfill the requirements of subsection R 655-44, new wells designed to produce water shall be developed to remove sediment and materials introduced during construction and to restore the natural groundwater flow to the well to the extent. Shallow water well construction requirements. Possible. After a water production well is developed, a test should be performed to determine the rate at which groundwater can be reliably produced from the well. Following development and testing, the static water level in the well should also be measured. Static water level, well development information, and well yield information shall be noted on the official submittal of the well log by the licensee. 17.6 Pump work. All pump installations shall be completed in such a manner as to prevent waste and contamination of groundwater by pollution material entering the well from pumping equipment, casing connectors, fittings, piping, sanitary seals, or caps. R 655-417. 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. General. Diversion and beneficial use of groundwater from any water well regardless of depth requires approval through the appropriation procedures described below. Approval to construct a new well. The process for requesting approval to construct private water production wells, public water system supply wells, and recharge and recovery wells is outlined below according to the provisions of Section 73(3) of the Utah Code annotated. Authorization to construct a new well is granted by the state engineer upon approval of any of the following types of applications. Application to appropriate, application for an exchange, application for a fixed time, application for a permanent change, application for a temporary change, application for recharge recovery. Application forms are available from the state engineer's office. Each type of application requires information relating to the applicant, the amount of water, the point of diversion, the place of use, and the amount and nature of use of the water. A map or maps are required to be submitted with the application. An applicant must be able to demonstrate ownership of the water right before the application will be accepted for filing. A filing fee must be paid at the time the application is submitted, which is based upon the amount of water involved in the application. After the application has been filed, it is reviewed and advertised in a newspaper or newspapers of general circulation in the county, in which the source of supply is located and where the water is to be used. The state engineer may determine whether or not to advertise the application if it is a temporary change, a permanent change of point of diversion which is less than 660 feet from the existing point of diversion, or if it is an application to appropriate or change a small amount of water. Protests to the application may be filed with the state engineer within 20 days of the advertisement in the newspaper. Appendix. Appendix 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. The state engineer will determine whether a hearing is necessary to gather further information concerning the impacts of the application. If a hearing is to be held, it will be scheduled for the next hearing date set for the county where the application was advertised. Generally, water rights hearings are held twice a year in each county of the state. After reviewing the information presented by the applicant and any protesters, the state engineer will decide whether to approve or deny the application. The applicant and protesters will be notified of the decision by mail. If the decision is to approve the application, start and applicant cards will be included in the mailing to the applicant. Both applicant and protesters have the opportunity to request a reconsideration by the state engineer, or to appeal the state engineer's decision to the district court. The entire application process from filing to the state engineer's decision may take between 6 to 12 months or longer. If an application is not advertised, the length of the process may be reduced to 1 to 3 months. Proof process. Whenever a new well has been constructed that was approved by the process described above, the well owner is responsible to submit proof to the state engineer that the approved water right has been developed. The requirements of submitting proof are outlined in the approval letter sent to the well owner. Submitting a well log to the state engineer does not fulfill the requirements of the proof process. The well owner must hire a proof engineer or land surveyor to prepare and submit the proof for them. Approval to construct a provisional, test well, or non-production well. Provisional well. If a water right application has been filed and the applicant desires to commence construction of the well before the application is approved and has a legitimate reason for doing so, authorization to drill may be granted by the state engineer's regional offices, as per section 7335. The written request should be made to the regional office. If provisional authorization to drill is granted, the applicant will be allowed to drill, construct, develop, and test the well only. Water from the provisional well shall not be put to beneficial use until the associated water right application has been approved. The applicant assumes the risk if the associated water right application is denied, and if so, the applicant is responsible. 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. To have the provisional well properly abandoned by a licensed driller, authorization to drill a provisional well will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Approval will be based on the provisions of Section 7331 and Section 7332 of the State Code. After a review of the hydrogeologic conditions, the existing rights in the area, the potential for interference, the current appropriation policy for the area. If approval is granted, the start cards will be mailed immediately. Test well before an application is filed. Authorization may be granted by one of the state engineer's regional offices or the well drilling program in the SLC office to construct a test well for the purpose of determining characteristics of an aquifer or the existence of a usable groundwater source. The request to construct a test well can be made by completing a form entitled Request for Non-Production Well Construction and submitting it to the regional office or the well drilling program office in the SLC main office. If test well authorization to drill is granted, the applicant will be allowed to drill, construct, develop, and test the well only. Water from the test well shall not be put to beneficial use until an approved water right has been moved into the well. Test wells, unless they are converted to a production well or monitor well, should be properly abandoned by a licensed driller, which is the responsibility of the applicant owner. Authorization to drill a test well will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Approval will be based on the provisions of Section 73-3-1 and Section 73-3-2 of the State Code, after a review of the hydrogeologic conditions, the existing rights in the area, the potential for interference, the current appropriation policy for the area. If approval is granted, the start cards will be mailed immediately. Non-production well. Approval to drill and construction regulated non-production wells must be obtained from the well drilling program office in the SLC office or the state engineer's regional offices. Regulated non-production wells include monitor wells. These wells are used to monitor water level and quality. These wells are not associated with a water right. Cathodic protection wells. These wells are drilled and constructed with a sacrificial anode for the purpose of protecting steel structures at the ground surface from galvanic corrosion such as steel pipelines or steel tanks. These wells are not associated with a water right. Appendix 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. Closed loop heat exchange wells. These wells utilize the thermal conductivity of soil and groundwater without extracting the groundwater for the purpose of heating and cooling buildings. These wells are not associated with a water right. Other wells. These wells may include piezometers, inclinometers, AC grounding wells, dewatering wells, temperature gradient wells, etc. that penetrate and case aquifers deeper than 30 feet, but that do not produce groundwater for beneficial use. These wells are not associated with a water right. The request to construct a non-production well can be made by completing the form entitled Request for Non-Production Well Construction and submitting it to the regional office or the well drilling program office in the SLC main office. The division can take up to 14 days to review and respond to the NPW application. If non-production well authorization to drill is granted, the applicant will be allowed to drill, construct, develop, and test the well only. Water from the test well shall not be put to beneficial use. Non-production wells that are no longer being utilized for their intended purpose should be properly abandoned by a licensed driller, which is the responsibility of the applicant owner. This permit may not be the only authorization needed to drill a well. The applicant is responsible for obtaining other permits authorizations from federal agencies, other state agencies, and/or local jurisdictions as applicable. Moreover, if the applicant is not the landowner, it is the applicant's responsibility to ensure that approvals permissions have been obtained to trespass and drill a well on the property. This permit does not give authorization to trespass on private property. Appendix. Appendix 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. Request for non-production well construction. Utah Division of Water Rights. Well type. Test. Monitoring cathodic protection. Closed loop heat exchange. Piezometer, inclinometer, dewatering. Other. The proposed location of wells, county, area. Request for non-production well. Form comet bed for open loop heat exchange well. A non-consumptive water right application must be filed for open loop heat exchange will. Applicant owner name, mailing address, project address, contact person, phone, proposed start date, anticipated completion date, well driller name and license hashtag, proposed hashtag of wells. No. East-west distance, distance section, corner section, township, range, base, diameter, depth, property, parcel number. Use back of form or additional paper if more room is needed. If providing well locations in latitude, longitude, or UTM coordinates, please also provide the map datum used. This form must be completed and signed by the owner applicant and not by the licensed driller. Explanatory. Signature of applicant date. For office use only. Approved by approval date non-production well number 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. Approval to clean, deepen, or repair a well. A request to clean, deepen, or repair a well can be made to one of the state engineer's regional offices by completing a form entitled Application to Renovate an Existing Well. The application will be reviewed by the division and approval of the request will be granted soon thereafter if the water right is up to date with respect to ownership and title. If the water right is not up to date, then additional time may be required to make it so. The regional office will send an approval letter and the start applicant cards to the water user. Approval to clean, deepen, or repair a well does not include approval to replace the well if the repair cannot be completed. In an emergency situation, the request may be made and approval granted by telephone. However, a completed application must be then completed and sent to the division to confirm the request. After approval is granted by telephone, the driller must telephone the start card information to the well drilling office before commencing work, and then send the card in when it is received from the applicant. Approval to replace a well. If a well must be replaced, the owner may apply to one of the state engineer's regional offices by completing a form entitled Application to Replace an Existing Well. If the new well will be located within 150 feet of the existing well, the request will be approved soon after the application is received by the regional office, and an approval letter and start applicant cards will be sent to the well owner. If the water right ownership and title is not up to date, the approval of the application may be delayed until those issues are resolved. If the new well will be located more than 150 feet away from the existing well, the well owner must also file an application for a permanent point of diversion and go through the approval process described in the section approval to construct a new well above. When an existing well is replaced by a new well, the well owner is responsible to have the existing well abandoned unless the two well locations are listed on the water right appendix. Application to renovate an existing well. State of Utah. Pursuant to Section March 28, 1973 Utah Code Annotated 1953, as amended, application is hereby made to the state engineer to renovate an existing well based on the following showing of facts. 1. Water right no. Point of diversion. 2. Owner, address, leaks around the outside of the casing. APL claim W1. Application filed and received by 3. The existing well, casing needs repair, requires renovation, requires deepening. Form the work is name. 5. Explanatory. The applicant hereby agrees, if this application is approved, to abide by the rules and regulations promulgated by the state engineer regarding the renovation of existing wells. The applicant further agrees to, and hereby authorizes the state engineer to endorse his original claim or application to show any change resulting from this application. Signature of applicant. Signature of applicant. For office use only. 2. Application examined by recommendation. 3. Field examination by recommendation. 4. Application approved, rejected, subject to the following conditions. 5. Authority granted under this application will end. Area engineer. For Kent L. Jones, P.E. State Engineer. Appendix 1. Well drilling authorization approval processes. 1. Water right no. Point of diversion. 2. Owner, address. APL claim W. 1. Recommendation. Application to replace an existing well. State of Utah. Pursuant to Section March 28, 1973 Utah Code Annotated 1953, as amended, application is hereby made to the state engineer to replace an existing well based on the following showing of facts. 3. The new well will be FT north-south and will be inches in diameter and FT east-west of the existing well feet deep. Or, the Utah licensed well driller who will perform the work is, name. 5. Explanatory. The applicant hereby agrees, if this application is approved, to abide by the rules and regulations promulgated by the state engineer regarding the renovation of existing wells, including the abandonment of the existing well once the replacement well has been constructed. The applicant further agrees to and hereby authorizes the state engineer to endorse his original claim or application to show any change resulting from this application. Signature of applicant. Signature. For office use only. Application filed and received by. 2. Application examined by recommendation. 3. Field examination by. 4. Application approved, rejected, subject to the following conditions. 5. Authority granted under this application will end. Area engineer for Kent L. Jones, P.E. State Engineer. 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. 73 to 1-1. Waters declared property of public. All waters in this state, whether above or under the ground, are hereby declared to be the property of the public, subject to all existing rights to the use thereof. 73 to 1-2. Unit of measurement, of flow, of volume. The standard unit of measurement of the flow of water shall be the discharge of 1 cubic foot per second of time, which shall be known as a second foot, and the standard unit of measurement of the volume of water shall be the acre foot, being the amount of water upon an acre, covered 1 foot deep, equivalent to 43,560 cubic feet. 2-1-3. Beneficial use, basis of right to use. Beneficial use shall be the basis, the measure, and the limit of all rights to the use of water in this state. 73 to 2-1. State engineer, term, powers and duties, qualification for duties. There shall be a state engineer. The state engineer shall be appointed by the governor with the consent of the Senate. Hold office for the term of 4 years and until a successor is appointed, and have 5 years experience as a practical engineer or the theoretical knowledge, practical experience, and skill necessary for the position. The state engineer shall be responsible for the general administrative supervision of the waters of the state and the measurement, appropriation, apportionment, and distribution of those waters. The state engineer may secure the equitable apportionment and distribution of the water according to the respective rights of appropriators. The state engineer shall make rules, in accordance with Title 63G, Chapter 3, Utah Administrative Rulemaking Act, consistent with the purposes and provisions of this title, regarding conveyances, the construction of water wells and the licensing of water well drillers, dam construction and safety, the alteration of natural streams, sewage effluent reuse, geothermal resource conservation, and enforcement orders and the imposition of fines and penalties. The state engineer may make rules, in accordance with Title 63G, Chapter 3, Utah Administrative Rulemaking Act, consistent with the purposes and provisions of this title, governing Appendix. Appendix 2, Selected Water Laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation, see Title 73, Chapters 1-6. The form and content of applications and related documents, maps, and reports. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law, water distribution systems and water commissioners, water measurement and reporting. groundwater recharge and recovery, the determination of water rights, and the state engineer may bring suit in courts of competent jurisdiction to enjoin the unlawful appropriation, diversion, and use of surface and underground water without first seeking redress through the administrative process. Prevent theft, waste, loss, or pollution of those waters. Enable him to carry out the duties of the state engineer's office. And enforce administrative orders and collect fines and penalties. The state engineer may, upon request from the Board of Trustees of an irrigation district under Title 17 Billions, Chapter 2A, Part 5, Irrigation District Act, or another local district under Title 17 Billions, Limited Purpose Local Government Entities Local Districts, or a special service district under Title 17D, Chapter 1, Special Service District Act, that operates an irrigation water system, cause a water survey to be made of all lands proposed to be annexed to the district in order to determine and allot the maximum amount of water that could be beneficially used on the land, with a separate survey and allotment being made for each 40-acre or smaller tract in separate ownership, and, upon completion of the survey and allotment under subsection, file with the district board a return of the survey and report of the allotment. The state engineer may establish water distribution systems and define their boundaries. The water distribution system shall be formed in a manner that secures the best protection to the water claimants and is the most economical for the state to supervise. The state engineer may conduct studies of current and novel uses of water in the state. Notwithstanding subsection, the state engineer may not on the basis of the depth of a water production well exempt the water production well from regulation under this title or rules made under this title related to the drilling, constructing, deepening, repairing, renovating, cleaning, developing, testing, disinfecting, or abandonment of a water production well, or installation or repair of a pump for a water production well. 73 to 2-1.5. Procedures. Adjudicative proceedings. Except as provided in Section 63G 4 to 102, and February 25, 1973, the state engineer and the Division of Water Rights shall comply with the procedures and requirements of Title 63G, Chapter 4, Administrative Procedures Act, in their adjudicative proceedings. 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. February 14, 1973, fees of state engineer, deposited as a dedicated credit. The state engineer shall charge fees pursuant to Section 63J1 504 for the following. Applications to appropriate water. Applications to temporarily appropriate water. Applications for permanent or temporary change. Applications for exchange. Applications for an extension of time in which to resume use of water. Applications to appropriate water, or make a permanent or temporary change, for use outside the state filed pursuant to Title 73, Chapter 3A, Water Exports. Groundwater recovery permits. Diligence claims for surface or underground water filed pursuant to Section 73.513. Republication of notice to water users after amendment of application, where required by this title. Applications to segregate. Requests for an extension of time in which to submit proof of appropriation not to exceed 14 years after the date of approval of the application. Requests for an extension of time in which to submit proof of appropriation 14 years or more after the date of approval 2 to 6% of the application. Groundwater recharge permits. Applications for a well driller's license, annual renewal of a well driller's license, and late annual renewal of a well driller's license. Certification of copies. Preparing copies of documents, reports of water right conveyance, and request for a livestock water use certificate under Section 73.331. Fees for the services specified in subsections through shall be based upon the rate of flow or volume of water. If it is proposed to appropriate by both direct flow and storage, the fee shall be based upon either the rate of flow or annual volume of water stored, whichever fee is greater. Fees collected under this section shall be deposited in the general fund as a dedicated credit to be used by the Division of Water Rights and may only be used by the Division of Water Rights to meet the publication of notice requirements under this title, process reports of water right conveyance, process a request for a livestock water use certificate, and hire an employee to assist with processing an application. Appendix 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. February 20, 1973. Employees authorized to enter and cross lands, injuring monuments a crime. In order to carry out the purposes of this title, any person properly employed hereunder is authorized to enter and cross all lands within the state if no damage is done to private property. It is a crime punishable under Section February 27, 1973, for any person to knowingly or intentionally remove or injure any equipment, permanent marks, or monuments made or installed by any person properly employed under this title. February 25, 1973. State engineer enforcement powers. For purposes of this section, initial order means one of the following issued by the state engineer: a notice of violation, or a cease and desist order. The state engineer may commence an enforcement action under this section if the state engineer finds that a person is diverting, impounding, or using water for which no water right has been established. Is diverting, impounding, or using water in violation of an existing water right. Violates Section 73 to 5-4. Violates Section 73 to 5-9. Violates a written distribution order from the state engineer. Violates an order issued under Section 73.329 regarding the alteration of the bed or bank of a natural stream channel. Violates a notice or order regarding dam safety issued under Chapter 5A, Dam Safety. Fails to submit a report required by Section March 25, 1973, or engages in well drilling without a license required by Section March 25, 1973. To commence an enforcement action under this section, the state engineer shall issue an initial order which shall include a description of the violation, notice of any penalties to which a person may be subject under Section February 26, 1973, and notice that the state engineer may treat each day's violation of the provisions listed in subsection as a separate violation under subsection 73.226. The state engineer's issuance and enforcement of an initial order is exempt from Title 63G, Chapter 4, Administrative Procedures Act. In accordance with Title 63G, Chapter 3, Utah Administrative Rulemaking Act, the state engineer shall make rules necessary to enforce an initial order, which shall include Appendix 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. Provisions consistent with this section and Section 73.226 for enforcement of the initial order, if a person to whom an initial order is issued fails to respond to the order or abate the violation. The right to a hearing, upon request by a person against whom an initial order is issued, and provisions for timely issuance of a final order after the person to whom the initial order is issued fails to respond to the order or abate the violation, or a hearing held under subsection. A person may not intervene in an enforcement action commenced under this section. After issuance of a final order under rules made pursuant to subsection, the state engineer shall serve a copy of the final order on the person against whom the order is issued by personal service under Utah Rules of Civil Procedure 5, or certified mail. The state engineer's final order may be reviewed by trial de novo by the district court in Salt Lake County or the the county where the violation occurred, a person shall file a petition for judicial review of the state engineer's final order issued under this section within 20 days from the day on which the final order was served on that person. The state engineer may bring suit in a court of competent jurisdiction to enforce a final order issued under this section. If the state engineer prevails in an action brought under subsection or, the state may recover all court costs and a reasonable attorney fee. February 26, 1973. Administrative penalties. As part of a final order issued under section 73-225, the state engineer may order that a person to whom an order is issued pay an administrative fine not to exceed $5,000 for each knowing violation or $1,000 for each violation that is not knowing, replace up to 200% of water taken, and be liable for any expense incurred by the state engineer or division in investigating and stopping the violation. The definition of knowingly, under subsection 76-103, shall apply to determinations under subsection. Appendix. Appendix 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1-6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. The penalties described in subsection shall be in addition to any criminal penalty established for a violation described in subsection, and any private right of action. Each day of a continuing violation of the provisions described in subsection 73-225, or an initial or final order issued under section 73-225, is a separate violation. A penalty may not be imposed for a violation of the provisions listed in subsection February 25, 1973, or an initial or a final order issued under section February 25, 1973, for a violation occurring more than 12 months before the day on which a notice of violation is issued. Separate violations under subsection may be consolidated for resolution in one enforcement proceeding under section 73-225. The state engineer has discretion to pursue an administrative fine, order requiring replacement, or both. Before imposing a fine or ordering replacement under subsection, the state engineer shall consider the value or quantity of water unlawfully taken, including the cost or difficulty of replacing the water, the gravity of the violation, including the economic injury or impact to others, whether the person subject to fine or replacement attempted to comply with the state engineer's orders, and the violator's economic benefit from the violation. The state engineer may require that the water unlawfully taken be replaced after a person fails to request judicial review of a final order issued under section 73-225, or the completion of judicial review, including any appeals. The state engineer's order shall require that replacement of water begin within 1 year of the day on which the time period for requesting judicial review of a final order issued under section 73-225 expires without a person requesting judicial review of the final order, or the completion of judicial review, including any appeals. Water replaced under subsection shall be taken from water that the person subject to the order requiring replacement would be entitled to use during the replacement period. If the state engineer issues an order requiring replacement, a copy of the order shall be placed in the Division of Water Rights records. The order requiring replacement shall constitute a lien upon the water right affected if Appendix 2, Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1-6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. The state engineer files a notice of lien in the office of the county recorder in the county where the place of use of the water right is located. A notice of lien under subsection shall include a legal description of the place of use of the water right. Any monies collected under this section shall be deposited into the general fund. February 2007, 1973. Criminal penalties. This section applies to offenses committed under Section January 14, 1973, Section January 15, 1973, Section February 20, 1973, Subsection 73-3-3, Section March 29, 1973, Section March 29, 1973, Section 7,602, an offense with a greater penalty under subsection 766, and 10,202, is punishable as a felony of the third degree if the value of the water diverted or property damaged or taken is $2,500 or greater, and the person violating the provision has previously been convicted of violating the same provision as a Class A misdemeanor if the value of the water diverted or property damaged or taken is $2,500 or greater, or the person violating the provision has previously been convicted of violating the same provision, or as a Class B misdemeanor if subsection or does not apply. 73-3-1. Appropriation. Manner of acquiring water rights. A person may acquire a right to the use of the unappropriated public waters in this state only as provided for in this title. The appropriation of public waters in the state shall comply with the requirements of this title. Except as provided in subsection, a person obtaining, initiating the use of, or providing notice of intent to appropriate a water right shall comply with the Appendix 2, Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1-6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law requirements of this chapter. An appropriation may be made only for a useful and beneficial purpose. Between appropriators, the one first in time is first in rights. A use designated by an application to appropriate any of the unappropriated waters of the state that would materially interfere with a more beneficial use of the water shall be dealt with as provided in Section 73-3-8. A person may not acquire a right to the use of water either appropriated or unappropriated by adverse use or adverse possession. Notwithstanding Section 73-3-2, a person may directly capture and store precipitation as provided in Section 73-3-1. 5. 73-2. Application for right to use unappropriated public water. Necessity form. Contents. Validation of prior applications by state or United States or officer or agency thereof. The nature of the proposed use for which the appropriation is intended. In order to acquire the right to use any unappropriated public water in the state, any person who is a citizen of the United States, or who has filed his declaration of intention to become a citizen as required by the naturalization laws, or any association of citizens or declarants, or any corporation, or the state of Utah by the directors of the divisions of travel development, business and economic development, wildlife resources, and state lands and forestry, or the executive director of the Department of Transportation for the use and benefit of the public, or the United States of America, shall make an application in a form prescribed by the state engineer before commencing the construction, enlargement, extension, or structural alteration of any ditch, canal, well, tunnel, or other distributing works, or performing similar work tending to acquire such rights or appropriation, or enlargement of an existing right or appropriation. The application shall be upon a form to be furnished by the state engineer and shall set forth the name and post office address of the person, corporation, or association making the application, the quantity of water in acre feet or the flow of water in second feet to be appropriated, the time during which it is to be used each year, the name of the stream or other source from which the water is to be diverted, the place on the stream or source where the water is to be diverted, and the nature of the diverting works, the dimensions, grade, shape, and nature of the proposed diverting channel, and Other facts that clearly define the full purpose of the proposed appropriation, in addition to the information required in subsection, if the proposed. Appendix 2, Selected Water Laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater and appropriation, see Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law, is for irrigation, the application shall show, use, the legal subdivisions of the land proposed to be irrigated, with the total acreage thereof and the character of the soil. In addition to the information required in subsection, if the proposed use is for developing power, the application shall show the number, size and kind of water wheels to be employed and the head under which each wheel is to be operated, the amount of power to be produced, the purposes for which and the places where it is to be used, and the point where the water is to be returned to the natural stream or source. In addition to the information required in subsection, if the proposed use is for milling or mining, the application shall show the name of the mill and its location or the name of the mine and the mining district in which it is situated, its nature, and the place where the water is to be returned to the natural stream or source. The point of diversion and point of return of the water shall be designated with reference to the United States Land Survey corners, mineral monuments or permanent federal triangulation or traverse monuments, when either the point of diversion or the point of return is situated within 6 miles of the corners and monuments. If the point of diversion or point of return is located in unsurveyed territory, the point may be designated with reference to a permanent, prominent natural object. The storage of water by means of a reservoir shall be regarded as a diversion, and the point of diversion in those cases is the point where the longitudinal axis of the dam crosses the center of the stream bed. The point where released storage water is taken from the stream shall be designated as the point of rediversion. The lands to be inundated by any reservoir shall be described as nearly as may be, and by government subdivision if upon surveyed land. The height of the dam, the capacity of the reservoir, and the area of the surface when the reservoir is filled shall be given. If the water is to be stored in an underground area or basin, the applicant shall designate, with reference to the nearest United States Land Survey corner if situated within 6 miles of it, the point of area of intake, the location of the underground area or basin, and the points of collection. Applications for the appropriation of water filed prior to the enactment of this title, by the United States of America or any officer or agency of it, or the state of Utah or any officer or agency of it, are validated, subject to any action by the state engineer. 2. Selected Water Laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater and appropriation, see Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. 3-3. Permanent or temporary changes in point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use. For purposes of this section, permanent change means a change for an indefinite period of time with an intent to relinquish the original point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use. Temporary change means a change for a fixed period of time not exceeding 1 year. Any person entitled to the use of water may make permanent or temporary changes in the point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use for which the water was originally appropriated, except as provided by Section 73-330. A change may not be made if it impairs a vested water right without just compensation. A person entitled to use water shall change a point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of water use, including water involved in a general adjudication or other suit, in the manner provided in this section. A person entitled to use water may not make a change unless the state engineer approves the change application. A person entitled to use water shall submit a change application upon forms furnished by the state engineer and shall set forth the applicant's name, the water right description, the water quantity, the stream or water source. If applicable, the point on the stream or water source where the water is diverted. If applicable, the point to which it is proposed to change the diversion of the water, the place, purpose and extent of the present use, the place, purpose and extent of the proposed use, and any other information that the state engineer requires. The state engineer shall follow the same procedures, and the rights and duties of the applicants with respect to applications for permanent changes of point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use shall be the same as provided in this title for applications to appropriate water. The state engineer may waive notice for a permanent change application involving only a change in point of diversion of 660 feet or less. The state engineer shall investigate all temporary change applications. If the state engineer finds that the temporary change will not impair a water right, the state engineer shall issue an order authorizing the change. Appendix. Vested. 2. Selected Water Laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater and appropriation, see Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. If the state engineer finds that the change sought might impair a vested water right, before authorizing the change, the state engineer shall give notice of the application to any person whose right may be affected by the change. Before making an investigation, or giving notice, the state engineer may require the applicant to deposit a sum of money sufficient to pay the expenses of the investigation and publication of notice. Except as provided by Section 73-330, the state engineer may not reject a permanent or temporary change application for the sole reason that the change would impair a vested water right. If otherwise proper, the state engineer may approve a permanent or temporary change application for part of the water involved, or upon the condition that the applicant acquire the conflicting water right. A person holding an approved application for the appropriation of water may change the point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use. A change of an approved application does not affect the priority of the original application, or extend the time period within which the construction of work is to begin or be completed. Any person who changes or who attempts to change a point of diversion, place of use, or purpose of use, either permanently or temporarily, without first applying to the state engineer in the manner provided in this section, obtains no right, is guilty of a crime punishable under Section 73-227 if the change or attempted change is made knowingly or intentionally, and is guilty of a separately punishable offense for each day of the unlawful change. This section does not apply to the replacement of an existing well by a new well drilled within a radius of 150 feet from the point of diversion of the existing well. Any replacement well must be drilled in accordance with the requirements of Section March 2008, 1973, 73-3-5, action by engineer on applications. On receipt of each application containing the information required by Section 733-2, and payment of the filing fee, it shall be the duty of the state engineer to make an endorsement thereon of the date of its receipt, and to make a record of such receipt for that purpose. It shall be the duty of the state engineer to examine the application and determine whether any corrections, amendments, or changes are required for clarity, and if so, see that such changes are made before further processing. All applications which shall comply with the provisions of this chapter and with the regulations of the state engineer shall be filed and recorded. Appendix. Appendix 2. Selected Water Laws of Utah dealing with well, drilling, groundwater and appropriation, see Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6. 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. The state engineer may issue a temporary receipt to drill a well at any time after the filing of an application to appropriate water therefrom, as provided by this section, if all fees be advanced, and if in his judgment there is unappropriated water available in the proposed source, and there is no likelihood of impairment of existing rights, provided however that the issuance of such temporary permits shall not dispense with the publishing of notice and the final approval or rejection of such application by the state engineer, as provided by this chapter. The state engineer may send the necessary notices and address all correspondence relating to each application to the owner thereof, as shown by the state engineer's records, or to his attorney, in fact, provided a written power of attorney is filed in the state engineer's office. E-3-5.5. Temporary applications to appropriate water. Approval by engineer. Expiration. Proof of appropriation not required. The state engineer may issue temporary applications to appropriate water for beneficial purposes. The provisions of this chapter governing regular applications to appropriate water shall apply to temporary applications, with the following exceptions. The state engineer shall undertake a thorough investigation of the proposed appropriation, and if the temporary application complies with the provisions of section 7338, may make an order approving the application. If the state engineer finds that the appropriation sought might impair other rights, before approving the application, the state engineer shall give notice of the application to all persons whose rights may be affected by the temporary appropriations. The state engineer may issue a temporary application for a period of time not exceeding 1 year. The state engineer, in the approval of a temporary application, may make approval subject to whatever conditions and provisions he considers necessary to fully protect prior existing rights. If the state engineer determines that it is necessary to have a water commissioner distribute the water under a temporary application for the protection of other vested rights, the state engineer may assess the distribution costs against the holder of the temporary application. A temporary application does not vest in its holder a permanent vested right to the use of water. A temporary application automatically expires and is cancelled according to its terms. Proof of appropriation otherwise required under this chapter is not required for temporary applications. 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. E-3-8. Approval or rejection of application. Requirements for approval. Application for specified period of time. Filing of royalty contract for removal of salt or minerals. It shall be the duty of the state engineer to approve an application if there is unappropriated water in the proposed source. The proposed use will not impair existing rights or interfere with a more beneficial use of the water. The proposed plan is physically and economically feasible, unless the application is filed by the United States Bureau of Reclamation and would not prove detrimental to the public welfare. The applicant has the financial ability to complete the proposed works, and the application was filed in good faith and not for purposes of speculation or monopoly. If the state engineer, because of information in the state engineer's possession, obtained either by the state engineer's own investigation or otherwise, has reason to believe that an application to appropriate water will interfere with its more beneficial use for irrigation, domestic or culinary, stock watering, power or mining development, or manufacturing, or will unreasonably affect public recreation or the natural stream environment, or will prove detrimental to the public welfare, it is the state engineer's duty to withhold approval or rejection of the application until the state engineer has investigated the matter. If an application does not meet the requirements of this section, it shall be rejected. An application to appropriate water for industrial, power, mining development, manufacturing purposes, agriculture or municipal purposes may be approved for a specific and certain period from the time the water is placed to beneficial use under the application, but in no event may an application be granted for a period of time less than that ordinarily needed to satisfy the essential and primary purpose of the application, or until the water is no longer available as determined by the state engineer. At the expiration of the period fixed by the state engineer, the water shall revert to the public and is subject to appropriation as provided by this title. No later than 60 calendar days before the expiration date of the fixed time period, the state engineer shall send notice by mail or by any form of electronic communication, through which receipt is verifiable, to the applicant of record. Except as provided by subsection, the state engineer may extend any limited water right upon a showing that the essential purpose of the original application has not been satisfied. The need for an extension is not the result of any default or neglect by the applicant, and the water is still available. Appendix 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. No extension shall exceed the time necessary to satisfy the primary purpose of the original application. A request for extension of the fixed time period must be filed in writing in the office of the state engineer on or before the expiration date of the application. Before the approval of any application for the appropriation of water from navigable lakes or streams of the state that contemplates the recovery of salts and other minerals therefrom by precipitation or otherwise, the applicant shall file with the state engineer a copy of a contract for the payment of royalties to the state. The approval of an application shall be revoked in the event of the failure of the applicant to comply with terms of the royalty contract. March 25, 1973. Well driller's license, enforcement, monitoring underground water made by any construction method, as used in this section. Well means an open or cased excavation or borehole for diverting, using, or. Well driller means a person with a license to engage in well drilling for compensation or otherwise. Well drilling means the act of drilling, constructing, repairing, renovating, deepening, cleaning, developing, or abandoning a well, or installing or repairing a pump in a well. Notwithstanding subsection, a person who installs or repairs a pump in a well on the person's own property for the person's own use is not required to obtain a license under this section. Except as provided in subsection, a person who installs or repairs a pump in a well for compensation shall obtain a license as required by subsection and is subject to all of this section's provisions. Notwithstanding the requirements of subsection, a person who performs electrical repairs on a pump in a well is not required to obtain a license as required by subsection. A person shall obtain a license as provided in this section before engaging in well drilling. The state engineer may enforce subsection in accordance with section 73 2-25 and February 26, 1973. A person applying for a well driller license shall file a well driller bond with the state engineer and appendix 2, selected water laws of Utah dealing with well drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. Payable to the Division of Water Rights. Compliance with this section and the rules authorized by this section is required to obtain or renew a well driller license. The state engineer may refuse to issue a license if it appears an applicant violates a rule authorized by this section. A well driller license is not transferable. In accordance with Title 63G, Chapter 3, Utah Administrative Rulemaking Act, the engineer may rules, state, make, establishing, the amount, form, and general administrative requirements of a well driller bond, the amount of a well driller fine, minimum well drilling standards, well driller reporting requirements, the requirements for obtaining a well driller license including a well driller license application form, the license expiration date and the license renewal cycle, and a procedure to enforce a well drilling standard or other well drilling requirement. A well driller shall submit a report to the state engineer, containing data relating to each well, within 30 days after the completion or abandonment of the well drilling, on forms furnished by the state engineer, and containing information required by the state engineer. In accordance with sections 73 2-25 and February 26, 1973, the state engineer may commence An enforcement action against a person who fails to submit a report required by subsection within 90 days of the day on which the well driller license lapses. A well driller shall comply with the rules authorized by this section. If the state engineer determines that a well driller has failed to comply with the rule, the state engineer may, in accordance with the procedures established in rule, order that a well driller pay a fine or revoke or suspend the well driller's license and exact the bond. The state engineer shall retain the money from a fine or exacting a bond as a dedicated credit. The state engineer may expend money retained from a fine for well drilling inspection, well drilling enforcement, or well driller education, and money retained from exacting a bond to investigate or correct a deficiency by a well driller that could adversely affect the public interest resulting from non-compliance with 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well drilling, groundwater, and appropriation rule authorized by this section. A. March 2006, 1973. Violations. Penalty. A person engaged in well drilling, as described in subsection March 25, 1973, is guilty of a crime punishable under section February 27, 1973, if the person does not have a current license to engage in well drilling, as provided by this title. Each day that a violation under subsection continues is a separate offense. March 28, 1973. Replacement wells. Requirements. State engineer's approval application to drill. Filing. Form. Contents. Notice. Fees. Definition. Plugging of old well. An existing well may be replaced with a replacement well within a radius of 150 feet from the existing well, without the filing of a change application under section 7333, upon approval first having been obtained from the state engineer. Such request for permission to drill a replacement well shall be filed with the state engineer upon a form to be furnished by the state engineer. Such form shall contain, but need not be limited to, the name and post office address of the person, corporation, or association making the request, the number of the claim or application filed with the state engineer covering the well which is being replaced, the number of the award if in a decree, the reason for the replacement, the location of the replacement well with reference to the nearest United States land survey corner, and from the old well, and the name of the driller employed by the applicant to do the work. No filing fee shall be required for the filing of such a request for permission to drill a replacement well, and the state engineer need give only such notice as, in his judgment, is necessary to protect existing rights, and in the event the state engineer shall determine that it is necessary to publish notice, the advertising fee shall be paid in advance by the applicant. The term replacement well, as used herein, means a new well drilled for the sole purpose of replacing an existing well which is impaired or made useless by structural difficulties, and no new right in the use of water accrues. Upon completion of the new well, the old well must be plugged by the applicant in a manner satisfactory to the state engineer. 73 to 5-9. Powers of state engineer as to waste, pollution, or contamination of waters. To prevent waste, loss, pollution, or contamination of any waters whether above or below the ground, the state engineer may require the repair or construction of headgates or other devices on ditches or canals, and the repair or installation of caps, valves, or casings on any well or tunnel or the plugging or filling thereof to accomplish the purposes of this section. Appendix 2. Selected water laws of Utah dealing with well drilling, groundwater, and appropriation. See Title 73, Chapters 1 to 6, 22 of the Utah Code for a complete description of Utah water right law. Any requirement made by the state engineer in accordance with this section shall be executed by and at the cost and expense of the owner, lessee, or person having control of such diverting works affected. If within 10 days after notice of such requirement as provided in this section, the owner, lessee, or person having control of the water affected, has not commenced to carry out such requirement, or if he has commenced to comply therewith but shall not thereafter proceed diligently to complete the work, the state engineer may forbid the use of water from such source until the user thereof shall comply with such requirement. Failure to comply with any requirement made by the state engineer under this section is a crime punishable under section 73-227 if the failure to comply is knowing or intentional. Each day that such violation is permitted to continue shall constitute a separate offense. Appendix. Appendix 3. Well drilling reporting instructions. Start cards. An approved application to drill a well will be accompanied by an approval letter to the applicant. Along with the letter, the applicant owner will receive an official applicant card and driller's start card. The applicant card must be kept by the owner applicant. Once the driller completes the well, the owner applicant must fill out the applicant card with the appropriate information and send the card to the Division of Water Rights. The well owner applicant must give the start card to the licensed driller to complete, sign, and submit to the Water Rights Office before drilling operations commence. It is a violation of the administrative rules for water well drillers to start drilling without notifying the Water Rights Office with start card information. Prior to the work, the driller is required to submit the start card through the online start card portal, call the Water Rights Office, or email fax a copy of the completed start card to the Water Rights Office with the appropriate information from the start card. Start cards have online submittal information including the authorization number, PIN, and the URL to the online portal. The online portal can also be accessed from the licensed drillers page on the division's website. The start card information can be phoned to the Salt Lake office at 538-7416. Alternatively, the completed start card can be faxed to the Salt Lake office at 538-7467. Start card can also be hand-delivered or emailed. If you are calling in the start card information, it is acceptable to leave the information on the voicemail system if a person does not answer the phone. If the start card info is called in, then the original signed and dated start card should be mailed to the division after the fact. If the start card is emailed or faxed, then the original does not need to be sent into the division. If the planned start date is delayed from that notified to the Division of Water Rights, the driller should re-notify the division with the updated start date. Regardless of the method of submitting start card information, it is highly recommended that the driller keep a copy of every start card in case a problem with reporting requirements arises. At a minimum, the following information must be provided when calling the start card information into the Water Rights Office. Application number, owner applicant name, well location including north-south offset, east-west offset, section corner, section township range, and base meridian. Appendix 3, well drilling reporting instructions. Well activity. Proposed start date and projected completion date. Licensee company name, licensee number, whether or not surface casing is used in unconsolidated boreholes with no other means of hole stabilization. Other comments as applicable. Approvals, permits, and start cards are not needed for regulated pump installation, cleaning, testing, development, and disinfection where the well itself is not being modified. Field inspections. During regulated well activities, the project site may be inspected by water rights staff at any time to verify proper authorization and compliance with well and pump rules. Water rights staff should present credentials, such as a business card, to verify that they are from the Water Rights Office. If serious violations are discovered at a drill site, the water rights staff, through the authority of the state engineer, have the authority to immediately shut down the drilling operation, pending a hearing with the state engineer. In this case, the water rights staff will place a cease and desist order signed by the state engineer on the drill rig. If red tagged, the driller cannot commence drilling activities until specific approval to continue is received from the state engineer. Official well driller's report. Once the Water Rights Office has received the start card information, the office will prepare an official well driller's report form and mail it to the licensed driller. The well log form will have the approval number, well owner applicant name, address, and well location information pre-printed on it. The driller must complete the remaining portions of the form, detailing all aspects of construction, then sign, date, and return it within 30 days of well completion. In an effort to improve the quality of well logs submitted to our office, we have implemented a rigorous review policy. The Administrative Rules for Water Well Drillers Section R 655-4.5.3 states, accuracy and completeness of the submitted. Appendix 3 Well Drilling Reporting Instructions. Official well drillers report are required. The information listed on the well log is important in that it provides a record of the construction and testing of a well which becomes a part of the legal water right record, and this information is utilized by many including the well owner, the state engineer's office, governmental agencies, researchers, consultants, and many others. The well log also assists the water right staff in determining if a well is constructed properly, according to the minimum construction standards set forth in the Administrative Rules for Water Well Drillers. Thus, it is critical that the well log be filled out as completely as possible. Water right staff review each incoming well log for deficiencies or improper information. If a well log is found to have data missing or is incorrect, the original log will be returned to the driller attached to a cover letter describing the deficiencies. The well log will not be considered officially received until it is corrected and returned to the Division of Water Rights. Moreover, the 30-day deadline for submittal of the official well log will remain in effect, even though the well log was returned to the driller. In summary, until a complete and accurate well driller's report is submitted and accepted by the Division of Water Rights, the driller's licensing records will reflect this non-submittal, which means that a driller will not be able to renew their license until the official well driller's report is submitted. An example of the official well driller's report form is attached. An original official form will always have a green band on the bottom with the words well log printed in the green band. The Water Rights Office can only accept this official form, and copies or substitute forms will not be accepted. The following paragraphs provide some guidance on how to complete the well log form. Well identification. This section is completed by the Division of Water Rights. This section will contain a water right number or a non-production well number, both of which are assigned and pre-printed on the form by the Water Rights Office. Owner. This section is also completed by the Division of Water Rights and contains the owner applicant name and mailing address. The mailing address does not necessarily correspond to the well location address. The driller can complete the contact person engineer if known or applicable. Well location. This section is also completed by the Division of Water Rights and contains approved point of diversion or well location in the Appendix 3, Well Drilling Reporting Instructions. Section Township Range Coordinate System. It is the driller's responsibility to verify that the location he is drilling is actually the location of the approved well location as provided on the start card and well driller's report. This can easily be verified by checking a USGS 7.5-minute topographic quadrangle map of the area, or by using a global positioning system set to the NAD 83 or WGS 84 map datum. An accurate survey is not required or necessary to verify well location. If the actual location differs from that of the approved well location, the driller should note any changes on the report if the driller knows the changes to be accurate. It is illegal to drill a well more than 150 feet from the approved well location without approval from the Division of Water Rights. If an owner wants a driller to drill a well more than 150 feet from the approved location, the driller should notify the owner that a change application must be filed with the Division of Water Rights before drilling commences. If the owner refuses to do this, the driller should notify the Division of Water Rights. The driller can also provide location description information such as well street address, proximity to buildings or other prominent landmarks, local or other well name, etc. If available. Driller's activity. The drilling start date and completion date should always be noted. The driller activity box must also be checked for the appropriate activity. The nature of use must also be noted. The nature of use can include domestic, commercial, industrial, public, stock watering, irrigation, monitoring, provisional, test well, heat pump well, cathodic protection well, etc. In the case of a replacement well, the driller must complete the section that describes the location of the replacement well relative to the old well. In most cases, these measurements can simply be made with a tape measure since the replacement well must be within 150 feet of the existing well. When a well is replaced, the owner is obligated to abandon the old well prior to completion of the replacement well. In order to track this process, the driller will be sent a well log for the replacement well and an abandonment log. Both logs must be completed and returned to the Water Rights Office within 30 days of completion of the replacement well. Information required on the abandonment report will be discussed later. If the well owner refuses to abandon the old well after being notified of the requirements by the driller should note that the owner refused to abandon the well on the abandonment form, sign and date the form, and return it with the well log. Keep in mind that all forms, well log and abandonment log, must be returned to Water Rights, whether or not the well is drilled or abandoned, or else the driller will not have fulfilled the reporting requirements. In Appendix 3, Well Drilling Reporting Instructions. Other words, the division tracks every well log and abandonment log that leaves the office to make sure it is returned. At least one row containing depth range, borehole diameter, drilling method, and drilling fluid should be completed in this section. If a drilling fluid is not used, then put none used or not applicable in the blank. Please do not leave the drilling fluid box blank. Also be as specific as possible on the drilling method. Lithologic log. The lithologic log is very important, and care should be taken to complete this section with as much detail as possible. Please indicate with a check where groundwater was encountered during drilling. Please indicate the relative permeability of each unit encountered. This only needs to be checked relative to water-bearing or saturated formations units. Please provide color information. Also, please provide a description of the sample with as much detail as possible. Some example properties that can be used to describe samples are listed below. Keep in mind that these are only examples of the type of information that can be provided. The actual descriptions may depend on the driller's understanding of the properties and the quality of the samples retrieved from the borehole. Grain size, sorting, grain angularity, rock type, bedding, grain mineralogy composition, density, clay plasticity, grain shape, cementation, consistency, moisture content, odor. 3. Well drilling reporting requirements instructions. Structure, fracturing texture, for example, phaneritic, aphanitic, glassy. Hardness, weathering. In the description area of the log, other pertinent information such as penetration rate, reaction of the drill rig, loss of circulation, hole caving heaving, changes to drilling fluid, and encountered contaminants can be included. Static water level, at a minimum, the water level measurement date, the water level, the method of measurement, measurement point, and height of measurement point must be provided. If the well is artesian and flowing at the surface, please check the appropriate box. If you need to convert pressure to feet of water, or vice versa, there are 2.31 feet per psi. If temperature or flowing pressure were not measured, then please indicate by placing a NA or some other indicator in the blank. A space is provided to include the ground elevation at the wellhead if available. This information is not mandatory, but if you happen to know the elevation from a recent survey, or approximated from a USGS 7.5-minute topographical quadrangle map, please provide it here. Construction information. At least one row of casing information must be provided in this section, including the casing depth range, casing type, casing wall thickness, and casing diameter. Use a separate row for each casing type, diameter, or wall thickness used. Please check the appropriate well intake type, either screen, perforation, or open bottom, as applicable. More than one box can be checked if it applies. If screen is placed in a well, the screen depth interval, slot size, diameter, and type must be recorded. If the well is perforated, the perforated depth interval, perforation size, perforation length, and the number of perforations per round interval must be recorded. The wellhead configuration, casing joint type, perforator used, must be recorded. In the case of driven steel casing, indicate if a drive shoe was utilized. Appendix 3. Well drilling reporting requirements instructions, surface seal, interval seal, filter pack, packer information. Indicate if a surface seal was installed and describe the seal depth and placement procedure in the appropriate blanks. The surface seal material description, quantity, and mixing information must be provided in the proper columns of the surface seal, interval seal, filter pack, packer information table. In this table, provide pertinent data for surface seal materials used to seal off intervals in the borehole such as poor quality water bearing zones, filter gravel pack information, and packer information. Please provide the specific type brand of bentonite if possible. Examples of seal material descriptions include neat cement grout, sand cement grout, EnviroPlug bentonite grout, AquaGord bentonite grout, Quick grout bentonite grout, BH bentonite grout, Volclade bentonite grout, 3/8 whole plug bentonite chips, EnviroPlug medium coarse bentonite chips, Volclade chips, Setco crumbles, 3/8 Volclade tablets, 3/4 prime plug bentonite chips, etc. Be as specific as possible in the description and type of sealing material. Describe in detail any filter pack information, for example, 3/8 washed pea gravel, 8 to 12 CSSI, DA8 SRI gravel pack, etc. Be sure to note the quantity of seal material or filter pack used per depth interval. Also note the mixing information in the grout density column when neat cement grout, sand cement grout, or bentonite grout is used. This column can be left blank when unhydrated bentonite such as when bentonite chips, pellets, tablets, or granules are used. If filter pack is installed, the filter pack depth interval, filter pack type, and quantity placed in the well must be provided. Because every well must have a surface seal, the surface seal depth interval, type, etc., quantity of seal material, and the grout density must be recorded. If the seal was placed using dry bentonite such as whole plug, chips, pellets, etc., then please indicate not applicable in the grout density blank. Well development and well yield test information. At least one row of this information must be completed and include, at a minimum, the date, the method of development or pumping, the yield during development or testing, and the drawdown in the well during development or testing. Keep in mind that the drawdown is not the pumping water level, but rather the difference between the pumping water level and the static water level. If the well was developed or tested with a pump, please provide the pumping duration. Dependent.